Hey there, my name is Florio. Welcome to the channel, or welcome back to the channel. Either way, it's good to have you here. So in this video, we're going to be taking a look at somebody suggested an interesting video about the Bible being a spell book. That cat. So I wanted to actually watch this video with you guys. I took a look at his channel and there's some stuff that's questionable about this particular fellow. I do not really like some of the spiritualist, like new age belief stuff that he's selling. I feel like he's kind of on the brink there, but we'll take a look more into him. His videos look interesting, but then he's also selling like spiritualist ideas, and we got to be cautious about people that are kind of trying to be thought leaders, because it starts getting a little funky. But I do find his topics quite intriguing. So let's take a look at this guy, and yeah, we'll kind of take it from there. I know this is a big intro, and like I'll just put it as a disclaimer or something. I'll add chapters to the video for people who complain, and you can go ahead and skip this at all times, you know. For those that might be new to my channel, if this is the first time you are here, just know that I myself am, there goes the kitty. I myself came from the like new age industry, is where I grew up in. I am also a pagan. I'm not a Christian or anything, so I'm not critiquing this particular video or this person based on their past beliefs, and I'm not really critiquing necessarily Christianity. I guess like he kind of is, but I'm just curious. I enjoy discussing religion and I enjoy debating religion too. But if you are here just because you don't like this guy because he's an ex-Christian and you're a Christian, like if you're here to just fight, I'm just either like not going to engage with you, or I might just leave you a snarky comment back. I don't know, we'll see. But I just want to kind of do this as an intro, because I do realize with this topic matter and also who I'm looking at, some Christians, like diehards, may click on this video thinking I'm going to like blast everything. And that isn't what I'm doing. If I do critique him, it's just my opinion of like some concerning things that have nothing to do with him being an ex-Christian and have nothing to do with I'm not a Christian. So like it's nothing to do with that. It's more I critique people that are making a business within the new age industry selling spiritual beliefs and practices and stuff, because it's a slippery slope. It's a slippery slope. Okay, to start, this guy has a very interesting look to him. I think he looks pretty cool. He's got like a, gothy, kind of creepy look. The name is Morgue Official, so we take a look at his stuff. He's an ex-Christian, but he's a thought leader, founder of the Neo-Ginian system. His channel is about creating a new humanity and a new earth through a new consciousness. My only concern is like these words are words that we hear from, I don't know, we need to give this stuff a nickname, where there's stuff that leads up to a cult leader and a cult starting. And it starts with things like this and these words, like thought leader. He wants to create a new humanity and a new earth through a new consciousness. So it's a little concerning what he's saying here, because this kind of stuff is just a little concerning to me. I don't like the wording. I think that the information that he's sharing is interesting, but the wording. So let's take a look. So he's got members only, creator of the first Bible. It doesn't look too bad. Hold on. Let me see what the membership options are. Step into the Citadel, our exclusive Discord community, and connect with like-minded seekers of knowledge and transformation. Like this is the only thing. Like, what is he saying and doing in the Discord? Nexus Academy. He's got study groups. There's live streams that they do, weekly discussions, insights, and Q&A. This wouldn't even be a concern if he wasn't selling himself as a thought leader, So Neo-Ginian refers to a system or philosophy likely centered around self-transformation and a new way of being. So like any new age kind of thing. Focuses on becoming aware and in control of one's own mind, essentially designing one's mental landscape. The thing is, like, this kind of stuff is like cult, like fodder, like food. Like this is what they do, right? In these organizations, they get people to transform themselves into a new, better version, and it's going to be based around what they think is new and better. You're building yourself based on what they think, like their mold, and that's where it gets really iffy. So he says he's the founder of the Neogean system. Okay, hold on. Let's see. Whose YouTube channel is this?
What is the Neogenian? Simply put, the Neogenian represents that enables us to achieving the
It's just a voiceover. There's no like person talking. He doesn't seem to be on video. I don't know how he's the founder of this. Okay, so if we go back to here, it said that it was started by, oh no, it does say here, a detail in a series of books by author Morgue. Okay, so it is his. Why does he have a faceless YouTube channel for it? This whole thing is started by him. The new science of mind. I get a little bit iffy about people who also try to sell their new age stuff as science. Creating the new earth. The fuck is this his? I might blur this. But it says the metaphorical self-unaliving, a guide to hyper-awareness. What the hell? Oh, he's got a shadow self, shadow. I friggin' hate that shadow crap. Like, it's so stupid. New science that shatters materialism. Yeah, I don't know. Like, this guy, gosh. If this fellow builds a big enough following, this could totally become a cult. If it's not already, we don't know what's going on in the Discord. Like, honestly, because he's got a faceless channel where he's like, what, recruiting people? That's so weird. There's Neogenesis. What is the soul? What happens when we die? What is God? So he's like selling all the books for sure. Mumbo jumbo voodoo schmoodoo. There's opening Pandora's box. Unfortunate for the closed-minded. I don't know if I finished my thought earlier, but what I was saying is I've noticed that anyone who is like a famous psychic, or there's like MLM people, coaches, spiritual coaches that become big, ones who like grift people, cult leaders, they always write books. It always starts with like a bunch of books. I've noticed the books are like the key. If you write a bunch of books, you tend to have more success. It's very weird, but yeah. I don't know what happens in the private discussions. So I've only watched like the intro of one of his videos. We will watch some more, but I think you guys can maybe see my concerns with this person, but his videos sound really interesting. And this would be stuff that I would watch just because I do find it fascinating. So he's got like, I investigated the real God and here's what I found. What's this? So the Bible's a spellbook, which is what we're going to watch. The Secret Gospel of Mary Magdalene, banned by the church. I mean, I have always heard like rumors that there was a Mary Magdalene like book or something like, you know, inside the Bible. I don't know if that's true or not though. The Greatest Secret of Jesus was banned from the church. The Bible has a huge problem and Christians are ignoring it. Was the real Messiah a woman erased from history? Like, I would totally consume this content. This is stuff that I definitely would watch. But nowadays, with everyone lying constantly, back in the day, I would have watched this and been like, oh my God, like fascinated. But nowadays, I find I watch stuff. I have to then go do research to see if this is true or not. And it feels like it's so time consuming now to watch this stuff because it's like, I don't even know if it's true anymore. Like, I'm at the point where I'm just like, I don't even know because I don't have the time to go research this after, and I don't want to consume it in case it like sticks in my mind as a wrong memory and I don't remember that it's from something I never fact checked. So I've been like avoiding stuff like this. But back in the day, I would have actually like consumed a lot of this content. And some of his titles are things that like when I was young, I remember hearing about this stuff. Like Mary Magdalene, Eve had a daughter. I remember hearing about this when I was younger. God is actually the devil and 2,000-year-old book. That's interesting. Yeah. That's the thing. There might be some truth in some of the stuff he's saying. Plus, he's also got like, he's giving some feedback on Christianity, which like I give feedback on psychics too. Like he came from that world and I came from that world. So like I get that, but it just feels really weird when someone's like essentially starting their own religion for the most part. Is Mr. Beast the devil? See, I don't like stuff like this is stupid. Leading expert in cosmology exposes the secrets of the afterlife. I don't like stuff like this. There's a lot of like wacko scientists out there, and some of them, like, you've got to take some of what they say with a grain of salt. There's some that are actually working on some math and stuff that like proves some things, and I have like fact check it and it is accurate, but then I hear the rhetoric that comes out of their mouth about like religion and stuff, and I'm just like, man, you're losing me. Like this is a bit of a problem. So I just don't like it because there's a lot of like scientists that are being attached to this kind of content, and then people believe it's true because a scientist is there, it's stuff like that. It's stupid crap like that. Math proves God exists. But here's the thing, like if you believe in God, you say you're an ex-Christian. So like, do you believe in God or do you not believe in God? Like, what's up? Does time actually exist? It doesn't. And this is stuff like, I feel like his stuff is trickled with accurate science and woo-woo stuff. And that is dangerous. Yeah, Jesus' secret wife. I heard about this when I was younger. See, you're more intelligent than the average person. Here we go. This is the love bombing kind of stuff to bring people in. Can AI become God? That has been theorized. Yeah, it's, I don't know. I would have to watch the rest of his stuff, but just like, looking at it briefly, I feel like alien psychology, but we don't know aliens, so how would we know? Like it definitely feels like this is like half information that's real or backed up and half just like crazy talk. And that is dangerous. This is the stuff that's dangerous because it's polluting people's minds and people don't know what's real and not real anymore. And they're getting like lost in the sauce with this stuff. And then if these people are thought leaders like another word for like cult leader, you know what I mean? And this guy is not offering retreats yet. If he starts offering in-person retreats, that's when we should be concerned. That's like the first step. And this thing, like there is like, I feel like there is more cults online happening and there is still damage being done and people are losing their money and people are like losing their lives too. But it's hard to prove them all. We kind of hear about them after the fact and like that, this could be happening with this. But at least when it comes to in-person stuff, oh yeah, thirst traps. At least when it comes to in-person stuff, like we know, okay, once this starts happening, then we got to start watching for a cult. But it's harder to pull people out of online cults. Pythagoras had a cult. I don't know, guys. This is given vibes. Yeah, this is his website. Okay. So why does he have like a faceless channel? Why doesn't he just go on video? Weird. It's strange. This is strange. Yeah, this is strange. Okay, so if we look at the bite model, this is the bite. I'm going to do a video on this, but the bite model is related to like how you identify a cult and stuff, right? So you have behavior. This is manipulative groups, like how people get manipulated, domination over their members, strict rules, rewards, punishments, limiting individual autonomy. So we can't fully see what's going on behind closed doors. We have to like join and kind of observe for a while. Like there is manipulative language and stories going on in his videos. So I don't know. Information. Examine tactics of manipulative organizations to control information flow through censorship and propaganda. This kind of stuff is propaganda. Like the videos he has, that is propaganda. The books are propaganda. And then they'll do censorship because they'll be like, well, don't believe the Bible or don't believe this or don't believe whatever's going on in real life because this is like the new whatever thought leader says that this is going to make a better earth, right? Thought focuses on psychological techniques used by such groups to shape beliefs and attitudes, suppressing critical thinking and promoting conformity. And that's what's going on with these videos and the books and everything. Emotion explores how manipulative organizations manipulate emotions, fostering dependency and loyalty through love bombing, guilt, and fear-based indoctrination. When you look at some of his videos, this is in here. Like you can see it in his videos. He talks about how special people are. Like that's a big one that people are using for online like cults, right? I would be curious. I have to talk to Sweet Goth, and if she's in the premiere and stuff when she checks this out or when you watch this later, Sweet Goth, is there anyone like busting cult online, like going and finding things like this, join their like Patreon, right? Get access to the Discord and just like investigate them for like 6 months? Like, is anyone doing this? Because I'd be curious if there was people doing this. I would really love to maybe like cover that and do a video on that, or like, I don't know. I would be curious about this. I do find that interesting, and I'd be curious if there's anyone doing stuff like this. So yeah. I did end up talking to Sweet Goth, and that's sort of what she does. She sort of runs and helps run an organization that goes in and busts cults, especially like online ones as well. She was saying that they don't necessarily go into Discord and things or anything that would put anyone into too much risk, but they do this stuff. So I'm planning to make a video where I go over the bite model, and as part of that video, I'm going to interview Sweet Goth. We're going to kind of discuss the people out there that are going out of the way to try to bust cults, and I know some people are trying to like help deprogram people and things like that. So I think that might make for an interesting video. And anyone that is in love with this guy, and if you come to my channel and you're angry about this, you can be angry about this, but just be aware of what I'm saying. He might not be running a cult. He might not be doing any of this, but what he's doing, the language, the videos, the private groups, things like that, these are warning signs. So this fellow might be fine and he might not be doing this, but just recognize when I do these videos, recognize what I'm telling you and look for it in other people. If you're seeing other channels or other thought leaders or psychics or whatever who are doing the stuff that I tell you guys about, I just want you to recognize the behaviors, the language, the words being used and stuff like that. That's sort of my goal here. And I hope you all understand that. Okay. So yes, I know I talk a bunch, but I did want to kind of do a rundown of this guy in general because I found it a little bit when I was first looking at him. But we're going to take a look at this video together because this is the video that I was told about, and they said that it was interesting, a little bit weird, but interesting. So I'm like, okay, yeah, let's check it out, because then it popped up on my algorithm after, and I'm like, okay, let's check it out. All right, let's get into it.
Is the Bible actually a spell book in disguise? If that's true, then you weren't meant to just read the Bible, you were meant to use it. Imagine Jesus not as a savior figure, but as a master magician. And the Psalms, not just hymns, but powerful spells to summon angels and demons. And imagine the 12 disciples as 12 signs of the zodiac in disguise. And imagine a divine word that's so powerful that mystics believed it held the blueprint of the entire universe. What if the Bible is a manual for activating power? Real power, the kind that could rewrite your identity, awaken your consciousness, maybe even bend reality itself. Now, before you grab your torch and pitchfork, I want you to think about this. All of this was hidden on purpose. The Bible itself admits it multiple times. Jesus even said he only revealed the real mysteries to his inner circle. He said, "It has been given to you to know the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven, but to them it has not been given."
Okay, I'm just going to interrupt here, pause for a minute while I'm editing. I'm trying not to include like his whole video. Ideally, it's what I try to do when I do this stuff. However, I want you guys to really pay attention to what he's saying, okay? I know he's talking fast, but he's throwing in like quotes from the Bible. He's throwing in verbiage from New Age stuff. He's throwing in like love bombing, things like you're special, this, that. And he's doing it quickly. And he's throwing in all these keywords and making it sound really good and very appealing to somebody who's struggling and looking for answers. So I don't know how much I'm going to cut out of the video that we're looking at together, just because I want you to kind of see this whole package. And I think this is a good opportunity for us to kind of like learn together and all recognize some of these things, these little tricks of the mind or tricks of verbal tricks or verbiage or whatever that he's kind of throwing in there to make it sound really good to attract people from all different areas, because he still talks very Christian-like, and then he talks New Agey and stuff, and he's bringing it together. And this seems to be the new thing right now, and it's drawing in a lot of people, and a lot of people are falling for this stuff.
The Bible flat out says it's hiding something. Proverbs even says it is the glory of God to conceal a matter, but the glory of kings to search out a matter. Essentially, the divine hid truth, and it's up to seekers, you, me, kings, anyone hungry for wisdom, to dig them out. So if secret knowledge is biblically endorsed, what might those secrets actually be?
Okay, just like initial thoughts going into this. He does quote like parts of the Bible. He knows it really well and everything. But I do see that, like, I see a lot of psychics and grifters also do the quoting of the Bible verses and stuff. And it makes people feel like they're still connected to the church and still connected to Christianity while they're exploring occult practices. And this is a technique that grifters use to just essentially get more gullible people into their clutches, because there's big money with people that are in the church and people that are willing to use occult or get into occult stuff. As long as there's a church wrapper on it, they tend to be a bit more gullible to these new ideas and things like that. So just for the most part, not all of them, but for the most part, a lot of them, it's been shown that they tend to fall for this stuff. And the thing is, like, you got to remember when we're looking at psychics and grifters and things like this, you know, cult leaders, whatever, they are taking advantage of stereotypes. And yes, not everyone falls under this. Not everyone is this. Like, yes, body language is not a provable science, but the thing is, these grifters use this stuff to get access to these people and take their money, have power over them, whatever it might be. Because we got to remember, like, there's a reason stereotypes exist. There's a reason why body language experts do exist. And yes, they're not taken seriously in court, but a lot of people, you can read their body language. Yes, not all of them, but a good chunk of them. And this is the same with a lot of people that are into religion. They tend to fall for more faith and occult stuff too. So it's easier to get to their wallet.
My name is Morgue. I'm an ex-Christian revealing hidden knowledge to wake up the world. And by the end of this video, you won't see the Bible the same way ever again.
I'm going to interject on verbiage during the editing here. To start, he's giving you hidden knowledge. So it's something, you know, forbidden, which always tempts us. And then he's telling us that it's going to change the way we see the world. It's going to change things. So going after people that aren't really happy with the world right now.
Because the stories were never just stories, they were spells. And you're going to discover exactly how to unlock its codes and awaken the power inside you.
So here again, he's repeating that he's going to be teaching you something that's super secret and special, and it will make you better. So what he's going to teach you is going to help you and make you something special that isn't like other people. And that is the verbiage that attracts people to cults and things like this.
See, the Bible has been used to control you, but now you're going to learn how to use it to break those chains and ignite the power inside you. Our first stop, the stars. Okay, have you ever noticed how the Bible is weirdly obsessed with the number 12? There's 12 tribes of Israel, 12 apostles, 12 gates of the heavenly city. Even Jesus's first words in the Bible, according to the Gospel of Luke, are at age 12. 12s are everywhere. Now, look closer at Christ's 12 disciples. Why 12? All right, sure, one answer is because there were 12 tribes of Israel. But some researchers say that this is not a coincidence. It's astrology in disguise. In fact, the infamous documentary Zeitgeist argued that the 12 disciples are simply the 12 constellations of the zodiac, which Jesus, being the sun, travels about with.
All right, this Zeitgeist movie is just like, it was all conspiracy theories and just complete false information. I'll just read a little bit of a summary here. It's been widely criticized and debunked for its historical inaccuracies. Like, I remember watching it back in the day back then, and then I ended up like looking up some stuff, and then there was other documentaries made to debunk this one. So like this whole movie it's completely bogus. So they talk about its misinterpretations of religious narratives, use of propaganda techniques as well. This was all centered around the 9/11 propaganda stuff too. Scholars and critics find its arguments to be unsubstantiated and misleading. So the movie, historical inaccuracies, it makes claims about historical events, particularly concerning Jesus and Christianity, and none of this is supported by mainstream historical scholarship. It's got misrepresentations of religious narratives as well, use of propaganda, the lack of academic support too. And this goes on to say, well, it might be an interesting like thought experiment or discussion. It's not, it doesn't have any sort of critical thinking and or reliable sources or anything attached to it either. So using this as like something to support your narrative in your YouTube video, it kind of says something about this person, does it not?
This text, the Bible, has more to do with astrology than anything else. In other words, the gospel is a big celestial allegory. Jesus is the sun traveling through the year, and each disciple or star sign plays a role in the story. Brings a completely new meaning to the whole Son of God thing, doesn't it? So if Jesus is the sun and the disciples are the zodiac, what does that actually mean in astrology? Well, it's a map of your consciousness.
His thought process on this is really good. I do find that very intriguing. I could see it being that because a lot of these stories in pagan mythos and everything that I follow, they attach like a god to it, but it's to explain the seasons. They attach like a goddesses, gods, proto-deities and whatnot, but it's to explain the seasons, it's to explain the changing environment, things like that. So that makes sense, and it kind of tracks with the way that mythos was created back then. This is where I think he's got some good points and can bring people in with this stuff for sure. Now, for the astrology part, what I was going to mention as well is that he did say people think it's because of the 12, things of Israel, the 12 tribes of Israel. That's probably more likely what it is, to be honest, if they were trying to write it like that. Unless the book came before the tribes, I'd have to do research on that. But it does, what he's saying does sound good, and it does make sense. And the other thing I was going to mention, so astrology and other things like that, spell work, necromancy, all that, it was practiced before Christianity took off too. And once Christianity took off, there were still people practicing it. There was like astrologers and psychics and people that did prophecies for like kings and queens. And the thing is, they all were the only people that were really allowed to do that for the most part were men of cloth. And they did it like under the Bible. So like the Bible was linked to the astrology stuff and the prophecy and everything. Like there was a business in it, and it was specialty people that were doing these kind of things and doing old spell work, but they were doing it as a man of the cloth kind of deal. There was a few that weren't like directly men of the cloth, but they were like still very religious. So it kind of worked like psychics nowadays who get into, they preach that they're Christian and it's okay because God made them. Therefore, psychic stuff must be okay, right? Like that's their reasoning. So, but yeah, this is interesting. I do think that he's got a good point on this. So I'm going to speed him up though, just so my video doesn't end up too long. And I'll just put on the closed captioning for people.
The sun, according to astrology, isn't just a flaming gas ball. It's you. It represents your soul and your identity, your inner light. And the zodiac, well, that's the 12-part cosmic wheel. And from our point of view on the earth, the sun appears to move through it over the course of a year. Well, each sign symbolizes a different phase of transformation, a distinct lesson or archetype in your personal evolution. It's not about worshiping the sun. It's about becoming it. But it gets deeper because the sun is also tied to death and resurrection, just like Jesus. Think about it. The sun rises in the east, climbs to its peak at noon, and then slowly descends into the west where it disappears into darkness. Gone. Dead. But come morning, like clockwork, it rises again. This is the original resurrection story, the oldest myth humanity ever told. In ancient Egypt, the sun was Ra, sailing across the sky by day and journeying through the underworld by night, dying and being reborn each dawn. And then there's Jesus. Jesus says, I am the light of the world. And guess what? So is the literal freaking sun.
Yeah, I believe there's also a Greek mythos about the sun as well, about someone chasing the sun. Greek or Norse, one or the other. So that is a constant story that does come up in a lot of different religion and mythos over time. So this whole like chasing the sun, then the sun like disappears, goes into the underworld, or it dies or whatever. It's in battle overnight and then it comes back again. Yeah, like he's essentially saying like, hey, this is the stories that existed before the Bible, and the Bible's copying them. However, we got to remember too, the Bible and Christianity, they assimilated things from the pagans. So they didn't push things on pagan people to force them to convert. Well, some of the Christian people did, like there were wars, there were some, but they tried to assimilate stuff, and that was more successful than like full out battle and war with pagans. So the assimilating of this story, like that's what this might be. It might just be assimilating pagan myth to get people to switch over to Christianity. Christianity. And that's something that we also got to remember as well.
There's Jesus. Jesus says, I am the light of the world. And guess what? So is the literal freaking sun. Jesus' journey follows the sun path. He rises in glory, descends into death, and rises again. But in this interpretation, Christ's story is actually your story, because this is cosmic psychology. The death and rebirth of the sun mirrors our own inner transformation. We die to our old selves and we are born again in the light of our new selves. That's the resurrection, a symbol of your awakening. Still not convinced that astrology shows up in the Bible? Let's talk.
Okay, so that rhetoric right there is very similar to like the born again Christianity like kind of deal as well. In what he just said, again, he's making people like feel special, like this is a story about you, not about Jesus. Like, so we just got to remember these little things when people are presenting this kind of stuff.
Talk about the wise men. You know the story. Jesus is born and suddenly mysterious wise men show up out of nowhere. They're called magi, a word that literally refers to astrologer priests from the east. And how did they find him? They followed a star. The moment Jesus is born, the first people to recognize his divine nature are astrologers, and the Bible celebrates them. So if astrology was so evil, why were astrologers the first to show up?
Again, this is exactly what I was saying. There were astrologers and they were men of cloth back then. I don't think that the Bible says astrology is evil. I think that was something that was added later when they were really trying to quash anything that seemed a cult-like, right? And I think it's something that's said today, but back in the day, astrology was taken seriously. Astrologers were a big thing. Magi, like it was a thing. You would get them to come to a newborn's like crib and like, you know, if you were usually higher class, they would come and they would do the chart and stuff, and they would chart out what this child's life is going to be like. This was a very common thing back then. So this also could just be a story of someone who was born too. Like this could be a mix. I think that it might be a mix, and we tend to forget the way the old world was. Like, it's not like it is now. And we got to remember when these books were originally written, when the story was first originally written, astrologer was like a normal thing. It was normal and it was like, okay, by the church and whatever. Like, it wasn't dangerous. It wasn't evil.
To worship the sun, and the Bible celebrates them. So if astrology was so evil, why were astrologers the first to show up to worship the Son of God? Which brings us to another number the Bible is completely obsessed with, the number 7, and it shows up constantly. 7 days of creation, 7 seals, 7 trumpets, 7 angels. The entire book of Revelation is practically sponsored by the number 7. Even the first verse of the Bible might hold a secret about this.
One thing I have been noticing a lot lately too is people trying to link like sacred numbers and all this crap. There's a lot of repetitive numbers in the Bible. Like every number repeats. Just don't take number stuff seriously. The numbers repeat a lot in all the books. Like it's not anything specific to one number. He went off first saying that it was 12. Now he's saying it's 7, but you could really say that for all the numbers for sure.
7. Genesis 1:1 says, in the beginning God created the heaven and the earth. But in the original Hebrew, it's Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz, which is exactly 7 words. And some Kabbalists interpret this as a reference to the 7 days of creation. So what's the deal with 7? Well, here's where it comes back to the stars. In the ancient world, Babylonian, Greek, Roman, there were 7 wandering stars visible to the naked eye. Today we call them the classical planets, which are the sun, the moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. These weren't just lights in the sky. They were believed to be divine intelligences, forces, energies that shaped fate and personality, and they were sacred. 7 sacred lights moving through the 12 constellations of the zodiac. There is a plausible connection between the biblical use of 7 and the classical 7 planets, especially considering ancient Hebrew culture was influenced by Babylonian astronomy and cosmology. So when the Bible uses 7,
yeah, everything he's saying is a plausible connection, which is what he said. I do agree. It is interesting. There is a link there. There is literature and history to back all this up. Yes, it is true. They were taking on Babylonian astronomy and cosmology as well. There's a lot of Babylonian pagan stuff that they were doing that they would take on too. So all this information's true. And he just kind of like, he's taking the Bible, and the stories in the Bible too they're a little vague, and they're supposed to be stories that we kind of live by. Like, we're not supposed to be taking them literally. But you could go in and say that you have a goal, which is to prove that the Bible is a spell book. And you can make stuff fit into your goal. Like, I feel like that's what he's trying to do here. It does work quite well, and there is backing for it, but there's also backing for other things too. It's not just astrology. I think the Bible is just one of those books that you can make work for things like this if you want to make an argument. And that's why there's so many different religions and versions of religions that follow the Bible. And that's why they all don't get along with one another, because they've all interpreted things in different ways. Like, this is the whole problem with the Bible to begin with. And that's why we have so many religious wars and everything over human history, is because people interpret stuff differently. And that's sort of how the Bible's always been. So it's kind of open to be interpreted to anything, and you can make anything, any argument really fits in it. So his argument's good. Like, it is, it's very well laid out, and there is backing for it. So it's interesting. It is, yeah.
Heaven over 600 times. It's not just for dramatic effect. Even the menorah, the 7-branched lamp in the temple, some believe it was a symbol of these 7 celestial lights. So now decode it with me. If 12 is the sacred structure, the wheel of time and archetypes, 7 is the energy flowing through it, the planetary forces guiding the soul, structure and motion, order and power. This isn't just about people and places. This is about you and your soul, your evolution. And once you start seeing that, you realize the Bible isn't just telling stories, it's casting spells. And if you think that's wild, just wait, because we're about to reveal a word so powerful. They said all reality is structured around it. So what happens when you speak it? Let's
just pay attention to his video. He keeps bringing everything back to, it's about you. It's about you. It's about your soul. It's about like your journey. Like, he keeps bringing it back to you. And that's I don't really know what to call it, but it's a thing. It's a thing that happens a lot in these new age circles. They try to bring people back. It sort of falls kind of under a little bit of like love bombing-esque kind of deal. Yeah.
Let's find out. If the Bible is a spell book, then the ultimate spell might just be the name of God. Those 4 mysterious letters, Yud, He, Vav, He. You might have heard it pronounced as Jehovah or Yahweh, but in Jewish tradition, the name is so sacred, it's never spoken aloud. Why? Because it's not just a name. It's a formula, a cosmic key, a vibration so powerful it was said to uphold the fabric of creation itself. And this is where the Kabbalists come in. So who are they? The Kabbalists were Jewish mystics and basically spiritual hackers who believed that the Torah, the first 5 books of the Hebrew Bible, was more than just a religious document. They saw it as a multidimensional code. Kabbalah literally derives from a Hebrew word meaning to receive, as in receiving hidden wisdom. The core mystical text of the Kabbalah is called the Zohar, and it's like the secret key for decoding the Torah. And the Zohar makes one thing crystal clear. Woe to the man who says that the Torah came to simply relate stories and mundane matters. If this were so, even today we could make a Torah from mundane tales and even better ones. But all the words of the Torah are sublime matters and supreme secrets. Now, hey, this is not my interpretation. This is the Zohar, the heart of Jewish mysticism, saying that if you read the Torah and only see history or moral lessons, you're missing the point entirely. The Zohar continues, the narratives of the Torah are only its outer garments. Woe to the one who regards this garment as the Torah itself. Such a person will have no share in the world to come. All right, let that sink in. The stories, the commandments, the miracles, they're just the clothing. The real meaning is hidden underneath the garment. Kabbalists and esotericists have long taught that the
This is even them, if these are their words exactly like translated. I know the Kabbalists were like mystic, like the mysticism. I don't know, whatever. And if these are their words, again, like they're reaching, he's reaching. Because we need to always remind ourselves the Bible was written by a man. So if there's any secrets or something hidden underneath, you're not going to find it. Like, you know what I mean? It was all originally written by people and then copied and like just copied by people. I just don't see someone hiding all these puzzle things in there when it was written by a man. I just think people like to interpret the Bible in different ways to fit their narrative and their goals in their current era or whatever, location, things like that.
Name of God, also called the Tetragrammaton, is a key to unlocking the structure of the cosmos. Those 4 letters are like a blueprint, and they correspond to all sorts of concepts around the number 4. 4 elements, 4 directions, 4 seasons. But most importantly in Kabbalah, it corresponds to the 4 worlds or levels.
All right, now we're on to the number 4. So we had number 12, now we're on number 7, now we're on number 4. Again, there's many numbers in the Bible, and you can just pick numbers to whatever and say like, oh, there's a bunch of these numbers that repeat. Every number repeats in the Bible. Like, It's all over the place.
Of reality. Yud corresponds to Atzilut, the world of emanations. He to Bria, the creative world. Vav to Yetzirah, the world of formation. And He final to Asya, the world of action, or the physical world. In other words, Yud He Vav He is seen as a process, the flow from pure spirit down to material existence. It's a formula for manifestation, but it gets even deeper. According to Kabbalists, the Yud is masculine, He feminine, Vav masculine, and He final feminine. So it's a kind of yin-yang symbol. In other words, the divine name is a formula for a process of creation that contains both masculine and feminine energies balanced and intertwined. It's not male or female in a modern gendered sense, but as a metaphor for poles of energy, like positive and negative charges. Basically, a symbolic structure of creation, polarity, and unity. All right, cool, but what about the New Testament and all the miracles that Jesus did? Walking on water, multiplying loaves, raising the dead, and the classic crowd pleaser, turning water into wine. Well, on the surface, it's a divine party trick, but is there more to it? Hell yeah, there is. Some esoteric interpreters say that Jesus' miracles aren't just displays of divine power, but metaphors, alchemical acts, coded teachings meant to initiate transformation to those that can see the secrets hidden in the stories. Why do you think Jesus constantly says his message will be understood only to those with the eyes to see and the ears to hear? In fact, Jesus flat out says he talks in coded stories that most people will totally misunderstand.
I don't really agree with this. I think I took it as that people who understand like what he's preaching will understand what he's saying, kind of thing. It's like us nowadays. It's like, okay, people who want to believe in psychics, they won't see what I'm saying. But people who want to understand how they're doing it, or they want to understand how it could be fake, then they'll start seeing what I'm saying. But they're not going to, like, people that totally want to believe and they don't want to listen to what we're saying, debunkers like me and others, like, they don't listen and they're not going to hear what we're saying because they're choosing to not listen because they want to believe so bad. That's how I took this message, like these kind of messages from Jesus. And again, interpretation. This book can be interpreted so many different ways.
Secrets of the kingdom of God has been given to you, but to others I speak in parables, so that though seeing, they may not see, though hearing, they may not understand. Jesus deliberately encoded his teachings, revealing deeper truths only to those ready to receive them. So what was Christ's secret message? Well, to understand it, let's take a look at Jesus' first public miracle according to the Gospel of John, turning water into wine. Well, many mystics believe that this miracle is actually a spiritual parable, not a literal event. Water represents the ego or the old self, and wine is a symbol of wisdom and higher consciousness. So Jesus wasn't just making Merlot, he was signaling that.
Okay, now this is where he's going to start going off his rocker. He started with some good stuff. Back in the day when Jesus was around and these books are being written, people weren't doing like ego, id, shadow work, light work, blah, blah, blah. It wasn't, people weren't doing that. They weren't thinking about that. It didn't go that deep. There was some stuff in Greece. Yes, there was some like thought processes and stuff in Greece, but it wasn't the words that he's saying right now, and he's going to keep shooting them out. This is the new age terminology. This ego death, ego, shadow self, shadow work, light work, all this other crap. Like this is getting into just new age, like blah, blah, blah. That pulls people in.
To transform the self. In fact, he pretty much says this. No one puts new wine into old wineskins. Otherwise, the new wine will burst the skins, the wine is spilled, and the skins are ruined. But new wine must be put into new wineskins. Okay, obviously, this is not just a bartending tip. The new wine here can be read as a higher teaching, a revelation of spiritual truth. And the old wineskins, those are outdated structures, rigid dogma, the old self, people not yet ready to receive the deeper meanings. Jesus even says, I have yet many things to say unto you, but you cannot bear them now. In other words, you need to give up outdated and old ways of thinking before you can reach higher consciousness. But really, when it comes to inner alchemy, it's a metaphor for turning the lead of the old self into the gold of enlightenment. Instead of lead into gold, here.
No, now you're interpreting it to match your religion that you're trying to push. Like, this is all him now. He's just taking it from there. Okay, I'm just going to interject and we'll talk about these sayings that he's mentioning here. So the wineskin one, there's multiple meanings, right? This is sort of what I'm getting at in this, is that you can take the Bible and shape it for your agenda. So the wineskin thing, people talk about the literal meaning. Obviously, it's, Jesus spoke in a lot of metaphors and everything, right? But the spiritual meaning talks about, it explains message of grace, a new life in the kingdom of God cannot be contained within old religious structures. Then the need for newness, just as wine requires new wineskin. Jesus' new covenant required a new approach and a new way of thinking. It called for a transformation of the heart and willingness to embrace the newness of God's grace and love. And the consequence of resistance, it suggests that trying to force anything new into the old would be ineffective, but also destructive as well. So you can take this as a metaphor and turn it into whatever you want. Like, he's trying to say that this is about discovering God within yourself, but Jesus never really actually said that. Like, he talked about God as like the external, right? So, and just to make it clear, he's using these parables, metaphors, whatever of Jesus's to build up his argument so that it sounds more convincing. So someone who is actually like devout will fall for what he's trying to sell, which is like, a new religion or a new way of thinking or secrets, that weren't understood back then, but we can understand them now. Like, this is the purpose of him quoting all these different Bible passages and phrases and metaphors. Also, I'm just kind of realizing this. I'm editing my edit. He is speaking like this in his whole channel. He's trying to get the people who are questioning their faith. That's why he's got his channel labeled as ex-Christian. But when you watch his videos, he's actually very Christian. And he's trying to capture people that are questioning their faith and people that are in a weird spot and they're looking for real answers and they're questioning the church and they're like kind of wanting to walk away. He is definitely preying on people who are at a point where they are questioning things and they are trying to find the right answers for themselves. And when you're at that point, when you're questioning your faith, you're very susceptible to cult leaders and you're very susceptible to grifters. And he is 100%. I think he knows exactly what he's doing. Anyway, I'll carry on. Then the other one that he talks about is the I have many things to say unto you, but you cannot bear them now, Jesus thing. So he means that his disciples at that point in their spiritual development are not yet ready to understand deeper, more complex truths, indicating there's more to his teachings than they can currently grasp, that a future time facilitated by the Holy Spirit will be necessary for them to comprehend the deeper truths. So there's more breakdown here: progressive revelation, the Holy Spirit's role, the depth of teaching, future understanding as well. Some people talk about means natural man can't understand or discern many things of the kingdom because they're spiritually discerned or not understood by God's. Okay. Essentially, again, you can turn this into anything you want. But honestly, when you look at the Jesus stuff, like, he was a cult leader. It was a cult. He started a cult. Cults were very big and popular back then. Everyone had a cult. So Jesus would do these things so people were hanging on his words and trying to find deeper meaning. And then they would find their own meaning within his words. And so then his words could fit multiple people's wants and needs in that moment because his stuff was so vague, right? That you can interpret it however you need to interpret it for yourself. Jesus was just a really good wordsmith, honestly. And yeah, I do think there was a guy, I do think that, just to, I don't mention this in the video, I do think there was just a man who was being a prophet or cult leader back then. I don't think he was some mystical being that was birthed magically, right? Conceived magically. I don't think that there's a one creator God, and I don't think he was his son. I just think he was a cult leader who was really good wordsmith and really good at leading people, right? So I do think there was a person in history for that, and that's what they kind of base these stories on. But again, he talks in a lot of parables. And if you went and seen the oracles of Delphi as well, they talked in parables and riddles too. It was a thing back then. So it was so that people could interpret things the way that they wanted to, so it worked for them. Honestly, I think Jesus, knowingly, I think he knew what he was doing. This is going a whole other route. This is going the route of this person is manipulating, or this person is interpreting the Bible to fit his narrative that he's trying to sell to people. That's what we're getting into now. So yeah, it's about 10 minutes, 11, 12 minutes in, and now we're getting into his real motive behind this video.
Here we have water into wine. I bet you didn't know alchemy was in the Bible. When you start seeing the Bible this way, you realize Jesus performing miracles isn't like a superhero in a Marvel movie. It's a coded message for your own transformation. Healing the blind can symbolize opening one's spiritual eyes. Walking on water could be about rising above the turbulent waters waters of emotion. Calming the storm might be about finding inner peace or integrating the waters of the unconscious. And raising Lazarus from the dead could be about awakening the spiritually dead. In fact, Jesus often criticized people for being spiritually asleep or dead and called himself the life giver.
Listen, this guy's good. You see how good he is at sort of shaping the words and shaping things to match whatever meaning and thing that he's trying to pull out of it. He's definitely very good at this Morgue guy. This is a good example for you guys to look in for other people that you might run into if you're ever unsure. But like, this is someone who's really good at a really good wordsmith, really good at manipulating the words to match a different meaning or match a meaning that fits his narrative.
But what if Jesus had an entire second layer of teaching, a mystery school curriculum that never made it into the official Bible? According to the Gnostics, he did. See, the Gnostics were a group of early Christians that totally got it and saw Jesus' teaching as an instruction manual to become Christ.
Yes, I didn't visually react there, but yes, he says that we can become Christ. That's what this is.
See, the word gnosis means knowledge, and Gnostics taught that you are a divine spark trapped in a material world shaped by ignorance and illusion, and that Jesus came not to die.
Gnosticism is very interesting. I would say if you want to learn more about it, go and check out, what's his name? The channel's called Esoterica. He's actually he's got like a PhD, and I believe he's a professor and stuff too. He does accurate history of this stuff, and he backs it all up with like texts and everything. So if you want to learn more about Gnostic stuff, it is intriguing. And like I said, I was raised Rosicrucian, and there was Gnosticism stuff like mixed in with it. It is very interesting, but anytime I want to like learn something like this and I want to get the actual text, I go to Esoterica. I go to his channel. I believe he's also Jewish too. So he's really good at like actually translating all this stuff and being very accurate. I usually look at his thing, whereas this guy, I'd have to go and fact check everything. I'm not going to fact check this whole video because it's going to run too long anyway. But like, I feel like I want to fact check a lot of the stuff that he's been saying in the last like 5 minutes. The astrology stuff I already know because I've researched, but how he translated some of the terms and the sayings and the sentences, that I want to fact check because I'm not sure. Translation is tricky, especially when you're doing Hebrew, and I'd rather hear the translation from Esoterica than this guy, to be honest. So yeah.
For your sins, but to remind you of who you really are. In fact, in a gospel of theirs called the Gospel of Philip, it literally says that when you understand the higher teachings, that person is no longer a Christian, but a Christ. Another gospel that didn't make it into the Bible, the Gospel of Thomas, opens with this jaw-dropping line. These are the secret sayings which the living Jesus spoke. And he said, whoever finds the interpretation of these sayings will not taste death. Hold on here. Secret sayings, not taste death? This is not the Jesus of Sunday school. This is Jesus the initiate, Jesus the revealer of inner gnosis, knowledge that liberates the soul.
Sorry for all the interruptions while I'm editing, but honestly, guys, like after watching this again 3-4 times to edit, I grew up with born again Christian church that was in my little town, and I had a bunch of born again Christian like friends and stuff. And doesn't this guy, or for any of you who are familiar, doesn't this guy sound like one of these youth ministers that would go in and act all like cool and like gothy and rocky and like try to connect with the kids by acting nonconformist, but all that they're actually doing is still spreading the word of God and Jesus? Like, does this not remind you of this? I feel like this guy, if this guy used to be a preacher, I would not be surprised. I have a feeling he used to be a preacher. How much you want to bet? Anyway, I obviously haven't done like a huge deep dive on him. I'll decide if I'm going to go through the effort, like spending the money and joining his Discord and spying on it, or he'll see my video and not let me join anyway. But anyway, let me know what you guys think. Those of you who are familiar with this, who have experienced this in a church, this totally reminds me of this.
Jesus continues and says, the seeker should not stop until he finds. When he does find, he will be disturbed. After having been disturbed, he will be astonished. Then he will reign over everything. All right, so the Gospel of Thomas is amazing. And Jesus goes on to reveal the kingdom of heaven isn't a place in the clouds, but a state of consciousness and all around us.
Also, it is important to point out, too, that Jesus himself was a cult leader. Like, this was a cult. Just like... just so everyone's aware. And cults were very popular back in the day at this time. So it wasn't unheard of to do this kind of stuff. It just his stuff stuck. I think probably because he was essentially killed for it. And whenever you murder somebody, it tends to actually bring the message out more, right? And then people tend to go with it more whenever there's a murder. So, yeah.
If we could just have the eyes to see it. Okay, but I have a ton of videos about all the gospels that the church tried to destroy. You should go watch them because they're really damn good. But this is not just a channel. This is a movement, a mental revolution. And you're not watching by accident. So make sure that you like and subscribe to help make enlightenment go viral. And if you want to go deeper, check out my books and downloads on inner transformation. Links are in the description. But this video isn't about the books that got left out of the Bible. So let's go back to the Bible itself. Because what if I told you the Bible has been used to summon demons?
Like, it's fine if you want to sell your book and get people to subscribe and stuff, but he threw in there the, like, this is like, what was it, a inner change or something like that? Hold on, let me bring it back up here.
Not just a channel. This is a movement, a mental revolution. And
yeah, this is not just a channel. This is a movement, a mental revolution. Those words are concerning. This is the kind of rhetoric you got to watch out for with stuff like this, with people like this. Just be cautious with words like that.
But this video isn't about the books that got left out of the Bible. So let's go back to the Bible itself. Because what if I told you the Bible has been used to summon demons? Yeah, seriously. Ever hear of Solomon? He was a biblical king known for his wisdom. But in medieval legend, he was also considered the ultimate magician. There's a whole genre of magic books called Solomonic grimoires, like the Lesser Key of Solomon, that are basically manuals on summoning spirits. And guess what those grimoires are chock full of? Bible verses. They instruct the magician to recite specific psalms and prayers to invoke God's power and compel demons. Let that sink in for a second. The Bible, the Holy Bible, was being used as a...
These texts were written around late 1400s through to the 1600s. These demonic things like demon stuff that didn't happen till later, much later. Around the time of the King James rewrites and stuff, there was a lot of different new, verses and stuff coming out, which has shaped like Catholicism and other religions nowadays. But the Lesser Key of Solomon, there was another demon text that came before that. I'd have to check my notes, but the other demon text came before. It was like, I think 1474 or something. And the Key of Solomon was 1545. And then there was the Infernal Dictionary, which I think was like closer to 1600 or something like that. I'd have to double check all the numbers, but you can see it in my other past videos. But the point is these were not written until much later. And these were written sort of based on folklore, history that these writers apparently did. Like we were taking their word for it. They never provided proof that these things were real. They never provided any backing to these demonic texts, like these demonic things. And a lot of the demons in these books were actually pagan deities or deities, proto-deities, also mythos and folklore heroes as well. And they got turned into demons because they were trying to demonize the rest of pagan religions that were out there, and they were trying to also say like, well, this is the correct religion because all these were false gods and they were actually demons. Like, these books were not written around the time of Jesus and the New Testament and all that. These were written much, much later. This is misleading. This is misleading here, which I know that this guy knows this. Like, he knows his stuff. So like, he knows this. He knows that this is misleading. So like, then you got to question some of the other stuff that he says too, right? You gotta be careful on this. So yeah.
Spellbook to summon demons. Okay, but how? To understand this on a deeper level, we need to talk about numbers and hidden codes. We've already explored the Tetragrammaton, Yud He Vav He, the sacred four-letter name of God. In some occult traditions, it's considered the most powerful name in existence, the nuclear option of divine language. But here's what many people don't realize. See, in Hebrew, there's no separate system for numbers. In English, we have the alphabet and Arabic numerals. But in Hebrew, the letters are the numbers. So when you read Hebrew, you're not just reading words, you're reading math. Let's take the Tetragrammaton itself, Yud He Vav He. Here's what each letter equals. Yud is 10. He is 5. Vav is 6.
Okay, now we're back to numbers again, and he's just gonna like scramble off a bunch of numbers, make it all connect, make it all work for what he wants, because these texts can be interpreted in any way to fit your narrative. So this is all just like, I don't even know what to call it. I can't think of anything like pithy to say about it.
And He is, of course, 5. Add it all up, and you get 26. So the numerical value of the name of God, Yud He Vav He, is 26. 666. Now, think of this name not as just a sound, but as a command line, as a string of divine code. Kabbalists believe that God created the universe through letters, but since every letter is also a number, it means reality is created through numbers. In other words, reality is created from a kind of code, like the movie The Matrix. All right, you might be thinking, okay, cool, sacred math, cosmic code, Yud-Hey-Vav-Hey equals 26. What does this have to do with summoning demons? Well, hold that thought, because before we can talk about how to manipulate reality, we have to understand how it's built. If reality is based on a code, like a divine operating system, then to change it, you need to know the language that it's written in, and that language is numbers. Okay, but to understand why this is so important and how it connects everything together, there's something you have to know. See, the Kabbalists weren't the only ones who saw reality as being built from hidden patterns. In fact, they were highly influenced by Pythagoras. Yeah, that Pythagoras. You probably remember him as the triangle guy from math class. But what they don't tell you is Pythagoras wasn't just a mathematician, he was a mystic, a philosopher, and basically the original Neo. Why?
Yes, Pythagoras saw the order in the world through numbers. He also learned this from ancient Egyptians, by the way. Like a good chunk he learned from ancient Egyptian priests. He was also a cult leader, and he also believed that human souls were inside lima beans, and you couldn't eat lima beans or step on lima beans, or you would be killing a human soul. So take everything with a grain of salt. These are all just cult leaders from back in the day when like people were free thinkers and no one really held them back. So their crazy ideas worked and flew, you know? So, yeah.
He saw the code of existence. He famously said, all is number. He literally saw the entirety of existence as numbers, and Pythagoras began his own secret society around all of this. Pythagoras was less of a math teacher and more of a badass rebel cult leader. Pythagoreans even used the pentagram to recognize each other as members, and to the Pythagoreans,
yes, he was like a badass cult leader, I guess, but like, let's not glorify cult leaders in today's day and age, all right? Like, let's watch our terminology on cults for today's day and age.
Numbers were not just for counting, they were existence itself. And of course, if you're going to have a secret society, what do you have to have? A triangle. I mean, hell, Pythagoras is the triangle guy after all. And at the center of their system was a strange sacred symbol called the tetractys. The tetractys looks simple, just 10 dots.
I think it's funny because like the MLM and the pyramid schemes and stuff, and now this guy's selling the triangle, which this was already a thing with Pythagoras, so I get it, but I just think it's kind of funny. It's just like a little bit hilarious that now we have the pyramid schemes and stuff, and it's connected to cults and MLMs too, so.
It's arranged in a triangle, but it was everything to the Pythagoreans. They literally worshiped this thing. Why? Because each row represented a level of creation. 1 was unity, the divine source. 2, duality, separation, polarity. 3, harmony, the synthesis. 4, manifestation, the physical world. And if you add them together, 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4, it equals 10, the perfect number, symbolizing wholeness and completion. The tetractys was a map of the universe, a triangle of power, the original pyramid of meaning. Pythagoreans meditated on it, swore oaths by it, saw it as the blueprint of reality. But hold on, the tetractys represents 4 levels of creation. Does that sound familiar? Here's where it gets wild. Centuries later, Jewish Kabbalists saw the tetractys and said, okay, bet. See, the tetractys has 4 levels, just like the 4 Kabbalistic worlds, and the 4 letters in the divine name. So, since in Hebrew, letters are also numbers, they decided to see what happened if they plugged the tetragrammaton into the tetractys, like plugging in holy code in a divine operating system. They repeated the letters in different combinations, like divine permutations, layering the sacred name of God across the tetractys. And when they added up the values of all 4 rows with the values of the Hebrew numbers of the tetragrammaton, the number they got was 72. Thus, they came to the conclusion that there were 72 names of God. Not names like Jeff or Steve.
Funny how there's 72 demons in the Lesser Key of Solomon and 72 angels that came in the book that happened later. I am curious if the 72 math was done before or after the Key of Solomon was written, because I don't know. I think that they're trying to make it work. They're trying to connect all these together. I'm beginning to think that the 72 thing was created around the time of the Ars Goetia stuff as well. I think I do talk about this later in the video, but I did eventually remember the Tetragrammaton is all linked to the Ars Goetia stuff. It like clicked in at some point because I did research this for my original Ars Goetia video. I'm Googling it right now. It says that it was dated back to around 840 208 BCE. So it was around before all these demon texts and such showed up. So I'm thinking that they probably wrote the Ars Goetia and the demon text and the angel text and all the other crap, like based around this 72. This is why, you know, some of the demons that they've added into Ars Goetia and some of the demons that are in like the Infernal Dictionary don't make sense. They don't seem to have a counterpart in history, and they don't seem to have a counterpart in folklore. Like we don't know where they came from. They aren't even mentioned in the Bible as a fallen angel or anything, but in the Ars Goetia they mention it. I'm thinking it's because they started making up ones to make the math work, because they had to have a exact number on each different ring of hell or level of hell or whatever, and everything had to be 72 in the end. So the Renaissance did stuff like this, and that was around the time when all these books were written. And the Renaissance is really good at doing these little puzzle things, right? So I definitely think that they wrote all that stuff to match the original historical stuff about this tetragrammaton, and also the Jewish mystics, the Gnostics and such, because they've been around for a long time. The mystics under Judaism. So they're saying that they discovered the text, though, in 1868. It's the earliest known attestation of the Tetragrammaton, dating back to 840 BCE. It's right here. But they're saying that they found it. They knew about 840 BCE. The Dead Sea Scrolls also had it as well, confirming its presence in text dating back to 1st century BCE. Yeah, so it sounds like people did know about it. It seems like this was first, and then they wrote the other text kind of based around this to match it, which it makes sense. Like all these puzzles and things that they're talking about, like remember, these books were not written by God. They're written by a man. So they threw these puzzles and other things in it to, again, make it work for whoever they want, like whatever you want it to work for. That's why everything's a little vague. But then throwing in the numbers and the puzzles and things like that is sort of like what they did back then too, right? To make things seem more mystical. I mean, Pythagoras was big on that with his cult, but ancient Egypt did stuff like this too. So numbers were like a big thing too back in the day. So anyway, we'll move on.
But basically like the code for the divine operating system of reality. Think of the 72 names like command lines, subroutines in the divine source code. Each of the 72 names is 3 letters long, and they saw them as a spell, a vibration, a key. And when recited with precision, intention, and ritual, they believed they could reprogram themselves and reality. Have you ever seen the movie Pi? Not like cherry pie, but the number pi. In the movie, the main character becomes obsessed with the mysterious 216-digit number hidden in the Torah. He believes it's the true name of God, a code that control the stock market, unlock spiritual enlightenment, or drive you insane. But why 216? Because the 72 names of God are each 3 letters long, and 72 times 3 equals 216. In the movie, discovering it is like hacking the source code of the universe. The movie is a metaphor for Kabbalistic magic, because if the universe really is code made from letters, numbers, vibrations, whatever you want to call them, then the 72 names of God would be like root commands. And those who know how to use them, they aren't just...
So is he taking his ideas from movies? Is he taking his ideas from like a movie mixed with like what he knows about the Bible and stuff, and he just kind of smashing it together? I think the number stuff gets a little bit silly because you're just going all over the place with numbers. Like you can do this with numbers with anything in life. You can pick something in life and assign numbers to it and then create crazy conspiracy theories around numbers. Like it is a rabbit hole that is kind of like messy and doesn't really prove anything, because you can do this with all numbers. So
just praying, they're programming. So how do you actually use them? Well, we're going to find out. Okay, but again, what does this have to do with summoning demons? We're going to get to the demons, I promise. But first, we have to talk about angels, because before magicians could command a demon, they believed they had to know how to invoke an angel. And this all comes back to those 72 names of God. As I said before, each of the 72 names is a 3-letter divine code, a spiritual formula. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Each of those 72 names was believed to represent a unique aspect of divine energy, a specific vibration or divine force. But energy needs a vessel, and that's where the angels come in. Kabbalists...
Yeah, this is all the Ars Goetia stuff and the related books that came after that created the angels. He's going to link to these books. This is all stuff from like the 1600s. This isn't like, I don't think that this Kabbalah stuff was like discovered back in the day before the New Testament. I think this is like the 1500s, you know?
And ritual magicians took each of the 72 divine names and added either El, meaning of God, God, or Yah, a form of the divine name, to the end of each name. This turned each abstract name of God into a named angel, basically a spiritual intelligence that could carry and embody that particular vibration or power. All right, if that's kind of confusing, here's an example. One of the 72 three-letter names is Mem Yud Kaf. If you add El to the end of it, you get Mikael or Michael. Mikael literally means who is like God, but that's not just a name, it's a statement of power and authority. In magical systems, Mikael or Michael is the protector, the spiritual warrior, the banisher of darkness. So to invoke Mikael is to summon the archetype of strength. Every single one of these angelic names, like Aladia, Vahuya, Siteel, Rehel, Lelahel.
These names literally were released when they created the accompanying angel book that went with the Ars Goetia book. Let me find the name of it. It was written in like the late 1500s, early 1600s. Okay, I think it was this book, the Shem HaMeforash, and oh yeah, no, I remember researching this for the video that I did. Yeah. This is more, it was like a list of names, and then they turned it into the angels. Yeah, so the guy who wrote the book about the angels, Rushlin, sorry, I don't think you can see that. Rushlin, he lists and names all the angels of the Shehem Hameforash, I'm saying it wrong, in 1517. This was his book, Dart Kabbalistica. This was his thoughts on the Kabbalah. This was his interpretation of the Shehem. Let me see if I can find a picture of it to try to show you. It's actually got a visual. Yeah, it's like this, but no, it's not the angels. It's this. I think this is the original design that was passed down by the Kabbalists. Sorry. It was passed down by them. This is the original design. And then they built it out to this to like put angels. And then every angel was assigned to a demon from the Ars Goetia. And that's sort of where all of this came into play. And this is the black magic and occult stuff that a lot of people like link to. And this is what he's going to be linking to. He's bringing it all back over to the occult stuff that's in the Lesser Key of Solomon. Yeah. This is all just like old occult work from the 1500s. So yeah. Also, if I'm not really explaining it in depth here because it's long to explain, but I've studied the Ars Goetia a lot, and then I started that demon video where I was doing like one demon a week, kind of deep dive on each demon of the Ars Goetia. But I've already deep dived on the Ars Goetia in the past. I have like an old video that's a couple hours long that just touches on each of them. Not really deep dive. Personally, I've done a ton of research on Ars Goetia, all the accompanying texts, the angel texts and everything too, the demons, the history of it all. I know I need to get more demon videos out. I've just been super swamped. So if any of this doesn't make sense to you, it's all clicking in my head. I know where he's going with this. He's linking in the Ars Goetia and the occult stuff, and then trying to say because the Bible, it matched the Bible, therefore, it's okay to do all this stuff because it's in the Bible, so it must be okay. Just like these psychics that come forward saying, well, if God made me and I'm psychic, then it must be okay. Like, it's playing on a religious aspect here to try to get people to tell themselves it's okay to play in the occult, or it's okay if they're questioning their faith to come to this guy and follow what he's saying. It's okay to follow his new religion or whatever crap he's trying to do, right? This is, it's manipulative, to be honest. It is. But what I was going to say is, if I'm not making any sense explaining the Ars Goetia here, do some research as well for yourself too. I have talked about it a lot in all the demon videos. I'll probably link my demon playlist to this, but I understand if it's not clicking for everyone, it is clicking for me because I have all this knowledge that he has. Like I have the knowledge of the Ars Goetia and all these demon books. So I see a bunch of this clicking here.
It's a channel for a particular force. Think of them like 72 rays of divine light, or 72 apps in the God software, 72 spiritual functions you can call on to transform reality and yourself. In traditional angel magic, you called a name, recite the psalm associated with it, and align yourself with that energy. Some were invoked for healing, some for protection, some for insight, some for battle. But here's where the line starts to blur, because the same system used to call on angels was later flipped by magicians, heretics, and sorcerers to command demons. So we've talked about the 72 angels, divine intelligences derived from the sacred names of God. But what if I...
See, he's bringing it back to Lesser Key of Solomon. So the Ars Goetia, it was mid-17th century, it was like mid-1600s, but there was a book that came before it. In medieval Renaissance, this is all Renaissance stuff, by the way, Europe, Goetia was generally considered evil and heretical in contrast to the Theurgy and Magia Naturalis, which is natural magic. There was magic being done back then. It was the astrologers and court, prophesizers and things like that. Like magic was a normal thing back then. They were still doing it from the pagan rituals. That's what magic is. It's just pagan, it's just ritual. It's just ritualistic stuff, right? So, okay. No, the pseudo Minakari daemon came before his, but there was one that came before that as well. So this one was 1577, but there was a book that came before this, 1563. The book also went on to argue that witchcraft does not exist and those that claim to practice it are suffering from delusions, which should be treated as mental illness rather than punished as witchcraft. This is interesting. Actually, I don't think I've covered this book. This is interesting. I haven't looked at this one, so I should come back to that at some point. But this book is based on another book. There was another book of demons that came before this. I think it's this. This work is likely related to a very similar 1583 manuscript titled The Office of Spirits, both which appear ultimately to be an elaboration on a 15th century manuscript, the I can't even speak French anymore. Livre means book of Espirites spirits. Actually, that might be Italian. Okay, the more detailed version is a direct but poor translation from English to Latin. This version was either copied or translated by a John Porter in 1583. So yeah, this book was around before that. Essentially, this is how I understand is they found some texts, some old texts and stuff, and then they kind of built it from there. This is 15th or 16th century French Goetic grimoire that inspired the later works, Lesser Key of Solomon and everything like that, right? The point is, all of these books were written during the Renaissance era, and they were not written anywhere close to when the New Testament and stuff was written. This is all stuff from the medieval times, and this was all stuff written by just dudes. There was no God working through them. They were I found a manuscript like that. And they're okay, well, that manuscript that you found, how do you know that that's just not made up? And they're oh no, it can't be because it talks about demons. There was no proof, right, that this is related to the Bible. There's no proof that these are really demons. They just suddenly out of nowhere found this thing during the Renaissance. This is all stuff invented during the Renaissance. This has nothing to do with the Bible. Okay, just to summarize that ADHD squirrel brain research we just did, the first book that we know of, this is the order that we know of, is Livre des Spirites, which is a book of spirits. That was released somewhere between 1400 and 1500. No one knows the exact year. Then the next book that came was the Shem Hemefarash, and that is the angel book. That's the accompanying 72 angels. And that was released in 1517. That's when that was written, released, whatever. Then the next one is Pseudomankari Daemon, which is the false monarchy of demons. That was written in 1577. Then we have Office of Spirits, the manuscript, that was written in 1583. Then we have the Ars Goetia, which was written in the mid 1600s. And then finally we have the Dictionnaire Infernal, the Infernal Dictionary, that was written in 1818. So it is funny because a lot of people refer to Ars Goetia and the Lesser Key of Solomon like it's this magical, mystical text and whatever, but it came after everything else was already released. It's they took an original book about demons and lore and stuff that nobody can prove the origins of. It seems to have just been made up, to be honest. And they kept building upon it with new releases, different countries, different writers, and they would build upon it. And then they linked it more to the 72, and they linked it more to the old Tetragrammaton and all that stuff, because that would give it more validity in the eyes of the church and in the eyes of even Jews and in the eyes of Christians and everything. And it's just a really well-written, essentially fictional book that was developed over 4 centuries. And that's why it's so detailed. And that's why everyone thinks it must be real and accurate, because look at all the detail and look at all the stuff in here. It's well, yeah, you're talking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different writers over 4 centuries. It's going to create quite a detailed book. Look at the Bible. It's very detailed. And that was written over multiple writers over multiple centuries, right? So same deal.
There's a dark mirror, because according to demonology, there are also 72 demons, spirits of chaos, power, and repressed knowledge. They're like the shadow twins of the 72 angels, like corrupted data from the same divine source code, viruses in the divine operating system. So where does this idea come from? It goes all the way back to Solomon. He was a wise king in the Bible, but in occult lore, Solomon was also a master magician, capable of summoning, binding, and commanding demons. So flash forward to the Middle Ages and the Renaissance, and Solomon's
Have you noticed that this guy keeps like linking stuff back to like software? Like what's up with this? The virus in the divine operating system.
So where does this idea come from? It goes all the way back to Solomon. He was a wise king in the Bible, but in occult lore, Solomon was...
This guy must be selling some Matrix stuff. Like saying that we're living in a Matrix. That must be a big thing. I'm feeling like Matrix vibes all over this. There's a ton of Matrix vibes on this.
Of summoning, binding, and commanding demons. So flash forward to the Middle Ages and the Renaissance, and Solomon's legacy explodes into a library of grimoires, magical handbooks for ritual summoning. The most famous, the Lesser Key of Solomon, also called the Lemegeton, and within it, the notorious Ars Goetia. This is where the 72 demons really take center stage. In this book, each demon is named, ranked, and assigned a seal, which is a sigil that you use to call them. And they each have special abilities, like revealing secrets, influencing emotions, destroying enemies, teaching science, and on and on. But here's where the Bible comes in. These grimoires instruct the magician to surround themselves with protection by invoking divine names, and often using psalms from the Bible. Take the Key of Solomon, for example. It tells the practitioner to cast a magic circle, burn incense.
Keep in mind that this casting a magic circle, protecting yourself with things before you like call upon things. This is all pagan. This is stuff that was done before the Renaissance. This was stuff that was done sort of, I mean, there was pagan groups doing it, Germanic and Celtic and stuff doing it. It was around the time of like when Greece was kind of about like they're about to fall. And then we went through like there was strife and war going on with that. And they converted them, the Germanic tribes and the pagan tribes, some forcibly. Then we went into like the Dark Ages. All of this is just copying pagan like spellcraft. That's all he did with the Ars Goetia. Took what he knew about pagans and witchcraft and things like that, and then applied it to demon summoning, because then you can then link that witches are evil because they do this stuff too. There's a lot of that in a lot of these texts at this time, because they were still trying to convert the leftovers, right? The cunning folk and people that didn't want to convert, or people from like other countries that weren't Christian. This was part of the propaganda, and they wrapped it all up in the Renaissance. Everything was wrapped up in fanciness in the Renaissance. There was a lot of art, there was a lot of literature, there's a lot of music and stuff that came out of the Renaissance, fashion and everything that affected everyone. And it was a very like, I don't know, tying things in a fancy bow kind of era. So, it's something to remember as well.
Wear consecrated robes and chant psalms. The Bible was literally their spell source. To some, this sounds like heresy. It was for commanding angels, binding demons, bending reality. It was a spiritual operating system. And Solomon, he was the original hacker. Today, many occultists believe that each of the 72 demons in the Ars Goetia corresponds to one of the 72 angels from Kabbalistic tradition. This creates a shadow twin concept. You could say the demons aren't the opposite of angels. They're the same forces, but reflected in a broken mirror. Each demon has its own sign or sigil, a symbolic glyph, and it's believed to act kind of like a phone number to that spirit. Or you could compare them to QR codes for the unconscious mind. Scanning them activates something internally. All right, hold on. What does all this mean? See, we've gone pretty deep here, looking at zodiac signs, planetary alignments, alchemical parables, Kabbalistic code, angels, demons, psalms as spells. We even plugged God's name into a triangle and found 72 magical subroutines. But what do we actually do with all this? All right, let's take a look at this in the grounded and rational.
Subroutines. He said a lot of like computer terms in this, and like I do think he's selling. I think his whole religion thing is about the Matrix. I think it's about the Matrix. I think this is what he's selling for sure. Let's just review some of the computer terms he uses. Calls the Bible spiritual operating system. King Solomon was the original hacker. Each angel and demon sign is a QR code. And he even says that we plugged God's name into a triangle, like plug like computer, or like plugged like entering the code. And then it created 72 magical subroutines. there's a lot of computer speak. So what I'm getting at is there's a whole conspiracy theory group online who thinks we're all in the Matrix, and they do the alien thing, and we're like a test. It then travels into QAnon, lizard people, anti-vaxxers, blah, 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 blah. I'm starting to think he's in that circle too. I feel like he's kind of hitting like every sort of area to try to attract as many people into his like weird religious movement that he's trying to do.
We need to understand what the hell this system actually is. It's not just superstition, and it's not just some medieval roleplay, and it's definitely not just about spooky rituals in candlelit basements. This is an ancient technology of consciousness, because in this system, names aren't just words, they're keys, and some of those keys unlock heaven, others hell, but those places aren't out there, they're in your own psyche. In fact, this is actual, powerful psychology. That's what it really is. You know Carl Jung, the father of analytical psychology? He would have totally loved this. He believed that mystical symbols, magical names, and divine visions weren't just fantasies or delusions, but manifestations of the collective unconscious. In other words, archetypes or organizing structures of the psyche that exist in all of us. In Jung's Red Book, he literally wrote down conversations with inner figures during trance states. Wise old men, serpents, divine beings. No drugs, no hallucinations, just what he called active imagination and raw psychological power. He saw all these experiences as symbolic representations of archetypes that exist within the psyche. So when ancient magicians summoned angels or demons, were they conjuring invisible beings, or were they creating a symbolic space to confront their own?
And just to touch on Jung's thing, his theory on all that too is sort of what's happening with the psychics who really believe that they're psychic. That's what they're doing. Their imagination is going wild, and they are seeing it as vivid visions, right? It's just imagination. He's building up to saying like this is the whole system to cracking the code of human consciousness and whatever, working on getting over your shadow, enlightenment, and this is how you're going to become the best human in the world and how you're going to connect with. It seems like he still believes in God and everything else, even though he calls himself an ex-Christian. I don't see it. He seems to still be quite Christian here. Yeah, I mean, he's going to end this all with like, you can crack your inner code, and we're all software crap, symbolism. And then he's going to be able to teach you how with his books or watch more of his episodes.
Take the demon names in the Goetia. Aleister Crowley wrote that they weren't literal spirits. He said the 72 demons are actually parts of the brain, and evoking them is about accessing and controlling parts of your mind. Many modern occultists agree. They see these demons as psychological complexes, pieces of yourself. Some are desires, some are fears, some are even hidden talents, some are traumas. And Goetic magic becomes a ritualized form of internal shadow work, a way of facing the monsters in your unconscious mind, not to worship them or fear them, but to integrate them.
One day I'll end up making a video explaining why I hate all these like buzzword terms for everything. But I know you guys probably realize too, I get like really annoyed when people talk about like shadow work and light work and id and ego and all this stupid crap. They're just trying to put like fancy labels on pretty much dealing with your psychological issue. And I don't think it's a good idea to go to people like this, thought leaders, coaches, whatever, to do things like what shadow work essentially is. And it's essentially working through all your past trauma, and it can cause tons of issues. You should be doing it with a therapist, not some guy off of YouTube or some coach that you find on Facebook. It can trigger really intense reactions, and it can overwhelm you. It can make existing mental health issues even worse. You can have unrealistic expectations of yourself in doing it too. There's a lot of potential for bad stuff, just being harmful to yourself. It's not good to do. And putting buzzwords on these things just makes it sound cool and like something that everyone should get into to find your inner self, when it's like, no, this is stuff that you should be working on with a therapist. And that's why I get really annoyed when I hear this crap. As any of you who are not new to my channel probably see my facial reactions and hear me like exacerbate over when I hear these stupid buzzword terms.
These spirits, in this view, are like autonomous fragments of the psyche, and calling Calling on them is a way to make the unconscious conscious, to take what's hidden and bring it into the light under your will. Same with angels. Invoking Michael isn't just about summoning a divine warrior to float down from heaven. It's about activating the archetype of protection and courage that's within you. You speak the name, you focus your intent, and you step into that role, and in doing so, you become it. If you want me to do a whole video on angel magic and demon magic and the Ars Goetia, let me know, tell me in the comments. All right, so after all this, maybe the Bible is a spell book. Maybe it's a code. And maybe it's not about summoning literal angels or demons. Maybe it's about summoning yourself. The demons, they're your inner chaos, and the angels, they're your highest potential. And maybe Solomon wasn't a historical sorcerer, but a symbol of what happens when you master the code and learn to balance both light and shadow within. And think about the divine name, Yud-He-Vav-He. In a psychological context, Yud-He-Vav-He could be seen as an archetype of the higher self, the totality of the psyche, both conscious and unconscious, masculine and feminine, left brain, right brain, all together in unity. And when it comes to the zodiac, I don't believe it has anything to do with literal planets or stars at all. Those are symbols for aspects of your own personality. It's all inside. The names, the sigils, the psalms, the rituals, those are the interfaces. They're how the ancients spoke with the deep layers of reality and themselves. And whether you call it magic or psychology, the effect is the same. Words shape perception, perception shapes action, and action shapes reality. Now look, let's be honest here. We can't say for sure that Jesus' disciples were literally meant to represent the zodiac, or that every miracle is a coded alchemical metaphor. We don't know that the Tetragrammaton was designed to be a mystical formula about the levels of the universe. These are theories and symbolic correspondences. But you have to admit, it makes a hell of a lot more sense than taking it all literally, because the alternative is believing the creator of the universe is obsessed with animal sacrifices, petty rules, and eternal torture over eating shrimp. Hey, look, at the end of the day, the Bible, it's a book of stories. So here's the real question. What's more empowering? Reading the Bible literally and bowing before a God, or seeing it as a symbolic spell book, a manual for transformation where you're meant to become God? But what about all the books that didn't make it into the Bible? All the secret teachings the church banned? What if the real teachings of Jesus were about how you could become divine, reign over everything, and never die? Check out my video about the greatest secret of Jesus banned by the church. It'll change the way you see everything.
All right, so that pretty much ended the way I said it was going to end. The astrology stuff was interesting. I like that. It was interesting how he linked that. It was very, very cool. But I really hate this shadow work stuff that people are selling right now, like this shadow work, and it used to be like ego id stuff. Some people still do the ego stuff, but like I just hate it because people like fall for it really easily. And if somebody's teaching it who wants to take advantage of their students, it's very easy to do when they're doing shadow work stuff. When it's like, you don't need to do shadow work. You can just do normal therapy. You know, it doesn't have to be this weird mysticism crap. Like you can just do normal therapy and work on yourself. When you start doing stuff like this, you start watching people or reading people's books or whatever, consuming their content, and you don't know the person behind this content, what their true motives are. And some people get sucked in very easily. And this is the beginnings of cults. And I do think there's a whole industry around this, or like a whole, I don't know how, like a expose or something that we could do about like these online cults that don't look like cults, but they are cults, you know, and they're still dangerous in their own right. And I do think there's something to this. But this guy, you know, maybe he's fine in the private group. I don't know, but he sure does have a lot of verbiage that I've heard from other new agey people that were running cults. So like he's borrowing a lot of verbiage that they do too. And him linking it to the Bible and Christianity is just, it's pulling in the Christians. And when you pull in the Christians who are dabbling in occultism, those ones are really easy and malleable. They're easy to mess with. Anyways, that's my thoughts on this video. But yeah, this ends this video here, but let me know what you think. Leave a comment below. I'd like to see some of your viewpoints on it and your thoughts about stuff like this and content like this. And what are your thoughts on this guy in particular too? What do you think? What's your opinion? I'd like to know what you think. But yeah, I will otherwise end the video here. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and I will see you guys in the premiere, and have a good rest of your evening.